Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for turn 5 of the Ersatz Caen scenario. As you can see, the board's still looking pretty busy. The situation has degenerated somewhat into a weird game of tag involving tanks, because it's got to the point where they're really the determinant of who's going to win this scenario. Those of you who saw the previous video will know that I lost my infantry bazooka team last turn, which was really unfortunate, especially as they only managed to damage the Panzer II. So while I still have plenty of infantry who I will need in order to occupy the objective spaces and hopefully win the scenario that way, in terms of fighting the German tanks, they are simply not equipped for it. I did not give my guys enough anti-tank weaponry. We're really deficient. And so unfortunately the burden falls on the British tanks to try and turn this scenario around, or to keep the Germans distracted enough that I can occupy the majority of the objective by the end of the game. Because again, as I've said before, that will be a bit gamey, but under the victory conditions that will be a win, and it'll teach the Germans to turn up with an armour only force. Of course, for the Germans, the situation's quite different. As they've done throughout the game, they're merely trying to deny me access to the victory condition area and thereby force a draw. If they can kill a ton of Brits and destroy a load of British tanks in the process, so much the better. And they've been doing a pretty good job of that so far. So things are a bit all over the place now. Just to give you the usual strategic overview, there is still a Panzer IV down there, all keyed up and ready to try and finish off that damaged Cromwell. There's also a Tiger, not Wittmann thankfully, but a Tiger nonetheless, also covering the area. Wittmann himself is up there, keeping an eye on all angles. That German infantry gun is still slowly hauling its way forward, but it's still pretty much an irrelevance at the moment. The damaged German Panzer IV, their command tank, is all the way over there. Now, the idea of taking the risk of sending that one in there, it's not very good for the Germans to sit on their laurels and try and hope that the British infantry will stay away. If they want to make sure that I don't occupy this zone, the best thing to do is to send in some armour to chop up and chase away, or just keep my infantry at bay, which they're doing a good job of doing. And just to make the lives of the British even more complicated, that Panther over there is still poised to come in and attack on the flank. So it's actually looking pretty nasty. The Brits, with only 2 battle tanks, such as they are, well, I'll start with the weaker one. They have the aforementioned damaged Cromwell down there, which cannot go anywhere. It's been hit in the tracks, so it's still capable of fighting, but it's outmatched by the German tanks in the vicinity, and it can't flee, which is appalling. But my 2 intact Cromwells, the ones with half a decent amount of anti-tank capability, one of them is taking cover behind that building there, and behind the wreck of the German flame unit, and is really keen to go after that damaged Panzer which is presenting its stern to it. But it has to be careful, because the Panzer II, not so much of a threat, and Wittmann's Tiger, massive threat, are waiting for it down there. Similarly, my other Cromwell over there has to think very carefully about what its next move is going to be, and a lot will depend on what that Panzer does there. So we are slightly over halfway through the, well, we're exactly halfway through the scenario. I'm just going to bring us in close. The Germans have the initiative, so let us see what they decide to do. So their first activation is for their command Panzer. And this one has some choices. There are some rather desperate and terrified, if they're honest, British infantry up there who have no hope of damaging or even denting him, really. But there is a Cromwell up there which will be activating after him. He's equally aware that behind him is another Cromwell. So it's not all that great. He is literally in the belly of the beast from the German perspective. Now, there's pros and cons. If he goes forward that way, he gets himself away from the threat in that direction, but he puts himself in the sights of the other Cromwell, and he's still fairly vulnerable. He could go forward and make a turn, so he's presenting his front armour to that threat and his side armour back down the road, but probably still not ideal, depending on what the Brits decide to do. Or he could remain there and almost emotionally blackmail the British with the possibility that if they destroy him, he will block that road. Now, that doesn't sound like much of a problem, but when you think about the British infantry having to find multiple safe routes to get to the objective, which is over there, a blocked road really isn't that helpful. Now, I don't think they would bite. Speaking as the British player, I would take every opportunity to destroy a Panzer that was given to me. So the Germans probably don't want to go down that route. There is, of course, the fact that that is a high-value tank. It's worth 2 command activation tokens to them, so they can't just throw it away in a profligate manner. So what to do? Final consideration. Because the tank is damaged, each turn it can only fire its main gun or its machine gun, not both. And that will impact on their thinking, because if that tank moves, it can only fire its machine gun. If it stays stationary, it has a chance of employing its main gun, although to be perfectly honest, it doesn't really have any decent targets at the moment. So I think it's difficult to say. Of course, the other possibility is if they stay put, they could be luring a Cromwell to its doom. But is it worth the risk of doing that at this stage in the game? Probably not. So they're going to go for it. They're going to go 1, 2, 3. Oh wait, no, sorry, 3. And 4. I hope that's not a really bad idea. Actually, no, let's keep some distance. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do that instead. Yeah. Okay, so he's hanging back a bit. He doesn't really need to get that close. And because he can't use his main gun, he'll just content himself with machine gunning that Vickers crew that's caught out in the open. He's not going to bother with suppressing fire because he doesn't really need to. So because he moved, he gets only a +2 to his shot. And he rolls a 2. That's not enough to hit the Vickers team, so they get sprayed with bullets, and no doubt they're hugging the ground and taking cover, but they are all right. So that is that tank's activation. Now my Cromwell up there, which can fire on the move, would be a bit foolish to turn down a shot like this. The only problem is if it stays stationary, it can't get a decent shot at that tank, which is annoying because it's firing through all that foliage. If it moves, it suffers a penalty to its firing, which is equally annoying. But of course, the great problem is it doesn't really want to stay there either, because it's at a disadvantage if it does. What on earth to do? Well, there are no easy answers to this, but it's going to move up to the edge of the foliage, which is probably only a fairly minimal help anyway, but is it even worth us taking a shot? We've moved now, so it's -2. 2, 3. No, all we'd achieve is to move, is to get a little closer. And we wouldn't even block the infantry. Although, if we move one closer, it would give the infantry something to hide behind for future turns. So, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to move up. I will fire, even though it's a pointless gesture, because there's no way we're penetrating that frontal armor with our gun. So that we'll just have to deal with the disappointment there and pray that we can take advantage of going first next turn. So back to the Germans. Now they have given the Panzer II the next activation. But the question now is what to do with it. Because it's still in the danger zone. There aren't any British units that can immediately target it. But it's not really able to do anything useful either, and it is damaged. The temptation is to start using it on the Brits in that building over there, but if the Germans do that, they put it at risk of being destroyed by that Cromwell over there. That is a bit of a tough one. Not sure what the answer is there. I mean, the Germans can afford to lose it because it's a weak unit, but there's no reason to throw it away for no reason. It's also not really obscuring Wittmann's line of sight down the road. I think what we'll do as the Germans is pull it in and just park it there for now, because there's not a lot that it can do. And the crew are still slightly suppressed, so it's not going to be all that effective at shooting either. So yes, we'll keep it there, keep it relatively safe for now. And that brings us to the other British Cromwell, which also has some tough choices to make. It is sorely tempting for that tank to come round and try and fire at that Panzer over there. But of course the penalty for moving fire will apply, and it would be offering itself up to Wittmann on a plate. It doesn't have the speed to really get anywhere that will keep it out of danger. And like the Germans, the British are a bit loath to lose a tank that's worth so many points. That said, if it did roll well enough and it did knock out that Panzer, it would deprive the Germans of their two command points, but it would be a very, very difficult shot to make. No easy answer to that one either. And it's still early enough in the game that the Germans don't have to worry too much about fixating on the British tanks and leaving their infantry unhindered. Not too sure what to do with this one. It is a very tough decision. All right, I'm going to take an immense risk. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Now the reason for this slightly crazy maneuver is because I want to be able to bring my gun to bear on the Panzer, but I also want my strongest armour to be showing to Whitman's Tiger, which is why I've jammed myself across the street in that really awkward position there. So, right, that's it then. Let's, yep, he's in range. Let's open fire and see how I do. I got a 4. That does not penetrate, unfortunately, because that was moving fire. That is really disappointing. So the risk didn't pay off, unfortunately. Let's just hope we're not a burning wreck by the end of the scenario. And speaking of burning wrecks, this Tiger has a bit of a choice to make. It can either take another shot, it's taken one already, at the damaged Cromwell over there. But the Germans are very aware that there's a gun crew hauling up their piece that would really like to get into action. And it's probably fairly necessary for them to do so because it's coming to the stage in the game where the Germans will want every gun to keep my infantry away from that circle over there. But of course, if the tank moves, it can't take a shot with its main gun. So, and that is an advantage that the British have, for all that it's a marginal advantage. At least they have a move and shoot ability, which the Germans don't seem to have. So, what is that tank going to do? I think on balance, and in the interests of getting that gun into action, it probably suits the Germans more to drive it a little way there, just to give that gun some room to come out and deploy. And it does mean that Cromwell lives to fight at least another day. But it must be quite demoralizing to watch Nemesis creeping towards you like that and not being able to do a thing about it, because with your tracks knocked out, you can't run. And funnily enough, it is now the Cromwell's turn. Now, previously, I just went for the tactic of attempting to land a hit on that Panzer with its main weapon, which, well designed for bunker busting rather than tank destroying. It's the only weapon it's got, so it may as well try it. So they are going to attempt to land a shot there. Let's see if we're on target. We are not. However, I am going to play precision so that even though we were slightly off target, the bombardment template doesn't wander too far away, meaning that the stern of that tank is still overlapped by the explosion. And it's a pitiful +1 when it comes to anti-tank, but the armor back there is a 6. So if we roll a 5 or a 6, we have damaged that thing. And we roll a 1. Oh dear. On target, but no dice. All we've done is irritate it. So the Panzer IV is obviously not going to stand for that. And as it's its turn, the logical move is for it to say, all right, my turn now, you've had your fun. And he's going to try and plant a shot right through that Cromwell's side armour. He gets a 4, that's an 8. That's the second hit, so that Cromwell is destroyed. Darn. So a second British tank has been reduced to smoking wreckage. So back to the British. Now their 4th unit is that Staghound. That really needs to try and get into the fight somehow, but what can it do? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh dear. No, we'd just be making ourselves a target for that Panther. And I really don't fancy, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, that huge great Panther that's poised to come trundling down the road. That severely limits my options. I think it's going to have to be a case of taking the Staghound out of there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and trying to find more gainful employment for it elsewhere on the battlefield. Because I really don't think there's no way we're getting past that Panther. So hopefully that was a wise decision. I think it is, because speaking of the Panther, it's their turn, and had I stayed where I was with the bum of the Staghound sticking out into the street, I suspect there would have been a loud explosion and lots of wreckage. So the Panther is just going to advance. Now we're in serious danger of being flanked, and it's not going to be pleasant. Now lastly, I have an infantry unit there. This is very mean of me, but needs must. I'm going to put that flamer unit there. Now there's not... they're a bit explosive. Best keep them away from my units anyway. There's not a lot that they can do there, but they can threaten to occupy the objective. And I can only hope that that gives Wittmann pause. But then, of course, I don't really have enough distractions in place. And he could very easily machine gun them while putting a shell through my tank. Depressingly enough, it is now the German turn, and they've used up all their activations, so it is Wittmann's turn anyway. And I think he's going to do the logical thing. We'll start with the machine guns on the group in the building. Right. Ooh, he rolled a 9. Okay. That flamer unit gets sprayed with machine gun fire and basically turn into a bit of a fireball. Ouch. Okay, that was a terrible plan. That was a very, very terrible plan. I should not have even tried that. No matter, I suppose. Now, oh yes, his other action, well, his other weapon, he's going to put a main gun round. Oh dear. So it's +5. This was such a bad plan. 7. Amazingly, Wittmann does not kill my tank. It's not over yet. Okay, I can live with that. Thankfully, he only rolled a 2. So that's one very relieved crew in that Cromwell over there. And Wittmann gets his activated token. Meanwhile, my one unit that is autonomous like Wittmann, Lord Lovat here, I think really needs to find himself some cover. There is a Panzer IV right behind him, although admittedly it's facing the other way. But there are other German units in the vicinity, and there's not very much standing between him and oblivion. So I think it would be best if he made a run into that house and just sat pretty for a bit. And I'll give him an activated token. So that is it for the activations. It's been another fairly bloody turn for the British so far, with no real advantage gained. In the supply phase, the Germans are just going to move up their little artillery piece. Hans Gruber can stay where he is. There's no point moving him somewhere else. And for the British... Oh, I forgot the British 6th activation. Whoops. Well, what I was going to do with them, under the cover of my tank, was to dash them across the street into the house. Actually, let's not send them too far into the house. And in the supply phase, the rest of the infantry would be fairly easy. I'm going to try to get as many of them as I can. Particularly these valuable officer types. Maybe we'll huddle those guys up round here. And all those other poor fellows in the vicinity of that rampaging Panzer IV can try and find some cover. Okay, so that is it. So just a quick look at the overall situation again. In a sense, not much has changed. The Germans are still doing a fantastic job of keeping the objective clear of British units. In fact, they're systematically wrecking every British unit that tries to get near it. You'll notice in the supply phase I didn't move the universal carriers. It's because they're rapidly running out of safe places to go and sensible things to do. So I don't want to just throw them away uselessly, so I'm going to let them stay where they are. The area, what was the British infantry staging area over here, is turning into a bit of a catastrophe because there's German armour rampaging round the place and there's a Panther coming to join the fun. and there doesn't seem to be very much we can do about it. We're just not hitting them hard enough. I can only hope that next turn we get a chance to pot something, but equally, both my Cromwells are in terrible danger. And if I lose one or both of them in the next couple of turns, I do not see this scenario ending well for the British at all. So it's advantage has been with the Germans so far this game, and it's continuing to stay with the Germans. All is not lost, but it's going to be very, very tricky to win it. But there are still 3 full turns of the game to go, and I do have a fair amount of infantry in that house. All I need is a superiority of forces occupying that space by the end of the game. And if I can pull that off, then a British win on scenario objectives may still be possible. But I do have to get my guys there, and I do have to get them there in one piece. And there's a lot of German armour in the way. So we shall see what happens in turn 6. But once again, thank you guys for following this series as we've played through another turn of Ersatz Caen. I really appreciate you guys giving me your company and your time, and I hope you found this enjoyable and interesting. As always, a massive hello and a big wave to my regulars. Always awesome to see you guys. And to anyone who's just joined us, if this is your first video on this channel, a very warm welcome to you. Please do check out the rest if you've enjoyed this one. Not just this series, I've done a few others for Heroes of Normandy, if that's what's brought you here. And naturally, if you see anything else on the channel that catches your fancy, please feel free to have a look, and I hope you like it. So a big thank you once again to all of you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!